When we talk about formal poetry, we usually describe a poem using terms like meter, which is the pattern of weak and strong syllables in a line, and rhyme scheme, which is the order in which rhymes occur. Sometimes rhyme and meter come together to make a unique pattern that takes on a life of its own. We call such patterns received forms because we have received them from the poets who first used the pattern. In this lesson, we'll look at one of the most important received forms in English literature. This form is the Petrarchan sonnet, also known as the Italian sonnet. Named after 14th century Italian poet Francesco Petrarca, the Petrarchan sonnet is a 14-line poem that uses iambic pentameter and a somewhat flexible rhyme scheme. When I use the term iambic pentameter, I simply mean that each line contains 5 iambs, or a weak syllable followed by a strong syllable, such as the word arise or the phrase the night. For the purposes of this lesson, however, we'll be focusing more on the rhyme scheme of the Petrarchan sonnet. When I say that rhyme scheme is somewhat flexible, I mean that the first 8 lines or octave of the Petrarchan sonnet almost always follows the same rhyme scheme, A, B, B, A, B, B, A. A good way to remember this is to think of the Swedish pop band ABBA. The rhyme scheme of the last 6 lines, or sestet, of the Petrarchan sonnet varies from poem to poem. Some of the most common rhyme schemes for the sestet are CDE, CDE, CD, 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 CDD, CDD, and CDDE, CE. Of course, these aren't the only rhyme schemes available for the sestet. Did you know that one of the most enduring poems in American history is a Petrarchan sonnet? In 1903, this poem was engraved on a plaque and placed on the lower level of the Statue of Liberty, where it can still be found today. This poem is The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Let's take a look at it. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. A. With conquering limbs astride from land to land. B. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand. B. A mighty woman with a torch whose flame. A. Is the imprisoned lightning, and her name. A. Mother of exiles, from her beacon hand. B. Glows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command. B. The air-bridged harbor that twin cities fame. A. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she. C. With silent lips, give me your tired, your poor. D. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. C. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. D. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. C. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. D. In order to determine whether a poem is a Petrarchan sonnet, we have to look for 2 signs. The first sign is that the poem has 14 lines. The next sign is the nature of the poem's rhyme scheme. It's easiest to look for the A, B, B, A, B, B, A, than for the rhyme scheme in the sestet. Chances are, if a poem has 14 lines and an octave that follows an A, B, B, A rhyme scheme, you've encountered a Petrarchan sonnet. The New Colossus certainly fits the bill. Another important aspect of the Petrarchan sonnet is what occurs between the octave and the sestet. Usually, the first 8 lines introduce an idea, question, or problem, and the last 6 lines provide a solution or a new perspective. The change that takes place is known as a volta, which means turn in Italian. Does the New Colossus contain a volta? Absolutely. The first 8 lines offer a vivid image of the Statue of Liberty, and the last 6 lines give us a new perspective by allowing the statue to speak. Now let's look at a more recent example of the Petrarchan sonnet. The following poem, The Professor by Joshua Megan, appeared in the October 2012 issue of Poetry magazine. I get there early and I find a chair. A. I squeeze my plastic cup of wine. I nod. B. I maladroitly eat a pretzel rod. B. And second an opinion I don't share. A. I think, wherever else I am, I'm there. A. Afterwards, I escape across the quad. B. Into fresh air, alone again, thank God. B. Nobody cares. They're right not to care. A. I can't go home, even my family, C, is thoroughly contemptuous of me. C. I look bad. I'm exactly how I look. D. These days I never read, but no one does. E. And anyhow I proved how smart I was. E. Everything I know is from a book. D. Obviously, the language in this sonnet is a bit more accessible than that of the New Colossus, but Megan is still using the Petrarchan as it was traditionally used. The octave, which follows a perfect ABBA, ABBA rhyme scheme, gives us a sense of how the poem speaker interacts with his colleagues. The volta takes place between the octave and the sestet, which Megan emphasizes by inserting a break, which turns our attention to how the speaker relates to his family and himself. The only unusual aspect of this poem is the rhyme scheme in the sestet, C-C-D-E-E-D. Let's quickly go over what we've learned about the Petrarchan sonnet. The Petrarchan sonnet is a received form that has 14 lines and a slightly flexible rhyme scheme. The first 8 lines are octave, almost follow an ABBA, ABBA rhyme scheme, but the rhyme scheme of the last 6 lines or sestet varies. Traditionally, a volta, which is a change in perspective or tone, takes place between the octave and the sestet.